A single photograph can destroy a lifetime of belief. One caption, one smile, one moment that proves you were never part of the story they were writing. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 65 years old. And 3 weeks ago, I found out my daughter got married the same way a stranger would. Scrolling through social media on a Tuesday morning with cold coffee and a sinking heart. The phone slipped from my hand when I saw it. There she was. My daughter Lily, radiant in a simple white dress, standing beside Marcus Whitmore in what was clearly a wedding ceremony. Behind them, smiling like proud architects of the moment, were Marcus's parents, Richard and Patricia Whitmore. The caption glowed on the screen like a knife wound dressed up as poetry. Finally married. Our family is complete. Complete. I read that word 7 times before my brain would accept what my heart already knew. Complete meant whole. Complete meant nothing was missing. Complete meant I had been deliberately erased from the most important day of my daughter's life. I called her immediately. 3 times. Voicemail. 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 Then a text casual as a weather update. Hey Mom, everything's fine. We'll talk soon. Soon. As if her wedding was a minor detail we'd get around to discussing whenever it was convenient. I sat in my kitchen in Richmond, Virginia, in the house where I'd raised her alone after my husband Daniel passed, staring at that photo until the screen went dark. And in that darkness, something inside me went dark too. Not with rage, not with grief, with clarity. For the first time in 40 years, I understood that I had spent my entire life being a mother to someone who had stopped seeing me as anything more than an inconvenience. They say memory works in strange ways when you're hurt. Mine came in waves. I remembered Lily at 6 years old, burning with fever from pneumonia. I worked days cleaning the Ashford estate in the wealthy part of town, then nights alterating dresses for Mrs. Chen's boutique in Carytown. For 2 weeks, I slept maybe 3 hours a night, working, then rushing home to check her temperature, make her soup, hold her small hand until the shaking stopped. When she finally recovered, she wrapped her thin arms around my neck and whispered, Mama, when I grow up and get married, you're going to be my maid of honor, the prettiest one in the whole world. I carried those words in my chest for 30 years. I remembered her sweet 16. I'd saved for 18 months, selling my grandmother's jewelry, working catering gigs on weekends, skipping meals so the money stretched further. We rented the Magnolia Room downtown. I bought her a dress that made her look like royalty. I hired a DJ. I stayed up 2 nights straight cooking, ribs, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, red velvet cake from scratch. That night, Lily stood on a chair and announced to everyone, My mama is the best mama in the world. I'm going to remember this forever. Forever apparently had an expiration date. I thought about the small sacrifices that became my entire life. Waking at 5 a.m. to make her breakfast before school. Helping with homework even though I never finished high school myself. Waiting up on Friday nights, terrified every time headlights passed the house. Driving her to her father's family every Sunday, so she'd know where she came from. When she went to college for business administration, I increased my hours. I cleaned the Ashford house Monday through Friday. I worked catering events on weekends. I wanted her to focus on her education, not worry about money. Every time my knees screamed after 10 hours on my feet, every time my hands cracked and bled from chemicals, I thought about the future she'd have because of it. But during those college years, something shifted. She stopped coming home right after class. Study groups, projects, networking events. Her answers got shorter when I asked about her day. It was fine, Mama. I'll tell you later. Later never came. It was her senior year when she met Marcus Whitmore. The first time she mentioned him, her whole face changed. She talked about him constantly. How smart he was, how his family owned investment properties across 3 states, how he had plans to open his own firm. I was happy she was happy. But something twisted in my stomach every time she said his name. Like he represented a world I didn't belong to. A future with no space for a mother who scrubbed other people's toilets. The first time Marcus came for dinner, I cooked for 3 days. Honey glazed ham, candied yams, my famous peach cobbler. I cleaned the house until it shined. I wanted to make a good impression. Marcus was polite, courteous. But I saw his eyes scanning our small living room, taking inventory of the worn furniture, the outdated wallpaper, the secondhand everything. Lily seemed nervous, over-explaining things like she was apologizing for how we lived. "Your home is very warm, Mrs. Carter," Marcus said when he left. But the way he said warm sounded like he meant small. That night, Lily told me I'd asked too many questions about his family, his job, his plans. Mama, not everyone shares their whole life story in one conversation. That was the first time I felt like I was a problem that needed to be managed. After graduation, Lily got a job at a big investment firm downtown. Marcus had a position at his father's company. They started talking about getting their own place, a condo in the expensive part of Richmond near the river. I supported it, even though my heart broke. "Young people need their space," I said, smiling like it didn't hurt. When they moved, I was still welcome, but with conditions. "Mom, just call first to make sure we're home. No more dropping by. No more spontaneous visits." I had to schedule appointments to see my own daughter like she was a doctor. The visits became less frequent. Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. When I went, they talked about work, their friends, their plans. They rarely asked about my life, like I only existed in relation to them, like my identity began and ended with being Lily's mother. Last Christmas, I noticed they spent most of the holidays with the Whitmores. "Marcus's parents have such beautiful traditions," Lily explained. "But next year we'll do it at your place." Next year never came. In February, Lily told me she and Marcus were thinking about getting married. My heart soared. I immediately started planning in my head. The church, the flowers, the dress. "That's wonderful, baby. When? How can I help?" "We want something small, Mama. Simple. Nothing complicated." But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. The months crawled by. Every time I asked about wedding details, Lily gave vague answers. "We're still figuring it out. I'll let you know." I started to feel like something was wrong, but I couldn't name it. In May, I noticed Lily posting more photos on Facebook. Pictures with Marcus, with the Whitmores, at expensive restaurants, places I didn't recognize. But when we talked in person, she barely mentioned any of it, like she was living two separate lives. One she shared with me, and one she kept hidden. By June, she'd canceled 3 visits in a row. Work. Emergencies. Things came up. The last time we spoke before I found out the truth was on a Sunday afternoon. I called to invite her to breakfast that Tuesday. Our standing tradition since she was little. The one morning a week I didn't work. "I can't, Mama. I have an important meeting." "How about Wednesday?" "Let me check and call you back." She never called back. And I, like I always did, waited. That Tuesday morning, the morning I should have been having breakfast with my daughter, I sat in my kitchen with coffee and a blueberry muffin. I logged onto Facebook to see photos of my neighbor's grandkids. And there it was. Lily, more beautiful than I'd ever seen her, in an elegant white dress, smiling next to Marcus in what was unmistakably a wedding ceremony. Behind them, Richard and Patricia Whitmore, dressed like they were attending royalty, beaming as the only witnesses to a moment that should have included me. The caption, "Finally married. Our family is complete." I read every comment. Friends congratulating them. Co-workers sending blessings. Distant relatives expressing surprise they hadn't heard about it. Not one comment mentioned my absence. It was like I had never existed in Lily's life. Like 40 years of sacrifice had been completely erased from her story. I sat there for 6 hours, checking my phone every 10 minutes. Hoping for a call, a text, an explanation. Nothing. Lily went on with her day, posting honeymoon photos from Cancun, thanking people for congratulations, sharing moments of joy I had been deliberately excluded from. That night, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, I understood something that hurt more than anything I'd ever felt. Lily hadn't forgotten to invite me. She had chosen not to, and in that moment of brutal clarity, I knew my life, as I had known it, was over. But what Lily didn't know was that her mother had stored up more than just pain over the years. I'd also stored strength I didn't know I had, dignity that had been dormant but never dead, and a capacity for decision that was about to change everything. The woman who got out of bed that Wednesday morning was not the same woman who had waited patiently her whole life to be valued. She was someone new, and she had a plan. The next few days passed in a fog. Lily didn't call, didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge what she'd done. She just kept posting photos from Cancun like nothing had happened, like I was just another follower watching her perfect life from a distance. I tried to stay busy. I went to church. I talked to my neighbor, Dorothy Hayes, who'd known me since Lily was born. But no matter what I did, the pain sat in my chest like a stone. It was while cleaning out the attic that the memories hit hardest. I found boxes of old school papers. Report cards where Lily always got straight A's. Birthday cards she'd made me with crayon drawings and crooked hearts. A letter she wrote when she was 18, just before college started. The letter was on pink paper, the handwriting careful and full of little hearts in the margins. Dearest Mama, tomorrow I start college. But nothing I achieve will be possible without you. You are my hero, my role model, the bravest woman I know. When I grow up, I want to be a mother just like you. Loving, selfless, someone who always puts family first. I love you with all my heart. You will always be the most important person in my life. Love, Lily. I read that letter 3 times before I could believe it was real. This was the same person who had just excluded me from her wedding. The same person who had promised I'd always be the most important. I sat on my bed with that letter shaking in my hands, and I cried harder than I'd cried since the day I buried Daniel. I cried for the girl who wrote those words. I cried for the woman she'd become. I cried for all the dreams I'd had about being the mother of the bride. But after the crying came something else. Rage. How dare she treat me like this after everything I'd done? How could she be so cruel? So ungrateful? I'd sacrificed my youth, my education, my dreams, all for her. I'd worked until my body gave out so she could have opportunities one never had. And this was how she repaid me. With humiliation. With exclusion. With silence. But after the rage came something worse. Shame. I started wondering if it was my fault. Had I been too clingy? Too unsophisticated for Lily's new refined life? I remembered the way Richard and Patricia Whitmore looked at me when we first met. That subtle expression of pity mixed with discomfort. To them, I was the embarrassing mother-in-law. Someone to be tolerated, not accepted. I got up and looked at myself in the mirror. There was Evelyn Carter, 65 years old. Gray hair. Hands rough from decades of work. Wrinkles around my eyes from years of worry. I wasn't elegant like Patricia Whitmore. I hadn't traveled the world. I didn't know about wine or theater or art galleries. I was a simple woman who had done the best she could with what she had. But did that make me worthless? Did that justify my own daughter treating me like I didn't exist? I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake thinking about all the signs I'd ignored. The gradual exclusion. The shortened phone calls. The visits that required advance notice. Everything had been so slow, so subtle. I hadn't realized I was being systematically erased from Lily's life. Friday morning, I called my sister Rosa in Raleigh. I needed to talk to someone, get advice, hear a voice that didn't make me feel crazy. She got married without telling you? Rosa shouted when I explained. That girl has lost her mind. How does a daughter do that to her mother? I told her everything. The changes in Lily's attitude. The discovery of the wedding on Facebook. Rosa listened without interrupting, which was rare for her. Evelyn, she finally said, her voice serious. I always told you that you gave too much to that girl. You spoiled her. You put her on a pedestal. And now look at the consequences. Her words stung because they were true. I had always indulged Lily. Always given in. Always put her needs before mine. But I'd done it out of love. So what do I do now? I asked, my voice breaking. Now you do what you should have done years ago, Rosa said firmly. You live for yourself. Lily has made her decision about what place you have in her life. Now it's your turn to decide what place she has in yours. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for hours, thinking about Rosa's words. She was right. Lily had made her choice. Now it was my turn. Saturday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. But when I answered, I heard Lily's voice, bright and cheerful like nothing had happened. Mom, guess what? We're back from the honeymoon. Cancun was amazing. We want to stop by this afternoon and tell you all about it. Tell me all about it. Like I was a casual acquaintance she was catching up with. Like she hadn't just excluded me from the most important day of her life. What time? I asked. Around 5. We'll bring pictures. And some gifts we got you. Gifts. Souvenirs from Cancun were supposed to make up for the greatest betrayal of my life. All right, I said. I'll be here. I spent the rest of the day cleaning, making sweet tea, buying fresh muffins from the bakery. It was what I always did when Lily visited. But this time, as I mopped and dusted, I wondered why I was still trying so hard for someone who clearly didn't value my effort. At 5 sharp, Lily and Marcus arrived. Lily looked radiant, tanned, wearing new clothes, completely happy. Marcus wore the same polite but distant smile he always had when he came to my house. "Mom," Lily cried, hugging me like we were best friends. "I missed you so much. Look at my tan." I hugged her back, breathing in her expensive perfume. Everything about her was different. Her clothes, her hair, her voice. It was like the Lily I knew had been replaced by a newer, shinier version that didn't include me. "Sit down," I said. I poured sweet tea, offered muffins. "Oh, Mama, these look so good," Lily said. But she barely touched hers. She probably didn't eat things like that anymore. Her new life didn't include neighborhood bakery treats. "So tell me everything," I said. "How was the wedding?" Lily glanced at Marcus before answering. "It was really nice, Mom. Simple. Just like we wanted." "Where was it?" "A little chapel in the hills. Very private. Just us and Marcus's parents. Just them and Marcus's parents. Like I didn't exist. Like 40 years of raising her didn't earn me a place at the altar." "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked, my voice shaking. Lily sighed. Put on the face she used to make as a child when she got caught doing something wrong. "Mom, it all happened so fast. You know how these things are. The date came up suddenly, and we didn't want to complicate it. Plus, I never liked big parties." It was a lie. Lily had always loved big parties. Her sweet 16. Her graduation. Every celebration we'd shared had been huge. But for her wedding, she wanted something intimate. Something that didn't include me. "But Mom," Lily continued in a syrupy voice, "that's why we came today. To celebrate with you. Look at all the gifts we brought." She pulled out a bag of typical tourist junk. A ceramic trinket. Some seashells. A t-shirt that said, "I love Cancun." Candy they probably bought at the airport thinking, "Oh, we should bring something back for Lily's mom." "Thank you, baby," I said, each gift feeling like a slap dressed up as kindness. We spent 2 hours talking about their honeymoon. The places they visited. The restaurants. The excursions. It was like watching vacation photos of strangers. I nodded. Smiled. Asked appropriate questions. But inside, something was breaking for good. When they left, with vague promises to see each other soon and an invitation to visit their new condo, I was alone in my living room, surrounded by cheap souvenirs, feeling the crushing weight of their absence. That night, as I shoved the gifts into a drawer where I'd never look at them again, I made a decision that would change everything. If Lily could live without including me in the important moments of her life, then I could learn to live without including her in mine. And in the silence of that early morning, with my heart still aching but a new determination growing inside me, I started planning the first step of my new life. A life where I was the main character. Not just the sacrificial mother waiting for scraps of attention. The Evelyn Carter who had waited her whole life for others to decide her worth died that night. The woman who woke up the next morning was someone completely different. Someone who had finally learned that respect isn't begged for. It's demanded. Sunday morning came with clear skies that didn't match the storm inside me. I woke at 5 a.m., and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel that crushing weight in my chest. In its place was something sharp and cold. Clarity. It was like I'd undergone a silent transformation overnight. Like the Evelyn who had spent 65 years waiting for others to define her place in the world had finally woken up. I made my coffee. Stronger than usual. I needed my mind completely clear for what I was about to do. I sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd waited for so many calls from Lily that never came. Where I'd planned special meals for visits that got canceled at the last minute. But this morning, that table didn't represent waiting anymore. It represented the place where Evelyn Carter was going to make the most important decision of her life. I pulled out an old notebook where I used to write down Lily's doctor appointments, school dates, friends' birthdays. Now I was going to use those yellowed pages to plan something completely different. My exit. On the first page, I wrote, "Plan for Independence, Evelyn Carter, August 15th, 2024. The words looked strange in my shaky handwriting, but they felt more real than anything I'd felt in years. First, I wrote, "Assess resources." I'd been saving my whole life. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't helpless either. I had savings from decades of work. I owned my house outright in a neighborhood that had become valuable. And something Lily never knew about. A secret bank account. I'd opened that account when Lily turned 18. It was supposed to be my wedding gift to her. Every extra dollar I made sewing dresses on weekends, I deposited there. For 10 years, I nourished that account, imagining the moment I'd hand it to her. My daughter, this is so you can start your marriage without debt, so you can have your own home, so you don't struggle like I did. But now, after being excluded from her wedding, that money was going to take a very different path. Second, research housing options. I couldn't stay in this house. Every corner reminded me of years spent waiting. I needed a new place, a space that was completely mine. I remembered my neighbor Dorothy telling me about her sister Gloria, who'd moved to a senior living community in Charleston. It's wonderful, Evelyn. Activities, security, people our age. Gloria says she's never felt so free. At the time, I thought those places were for people who didn't have family. Now I understood. They were for people who had decided to take care of themselves. Third, gradually cut ties. I couldn't just disappear overnight. That would cause drama and give Lily an excuse to play the victim. My mom was always so dramatic. That's why we didn't include her. No, my exit had to be silent, dignified, respectful, but definitive. After breakfast, I got dressed and left the house with more determination than I'd felt in years. My first stop was the bank. Mr. Gerald Thompson, the manager who'd handled my accounts for a decade, was surprised to see me on a Sunday morning. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter. Everything all right?" "Perfect, Mr. Thompson," I replied with a smile that surprised even me. "I'm reviewing my financial options. I might need to make some moves this week." "Of course. I'm available Monday if you'd like to go over your accounts in detail." "I'd appreciate that. See you Monday." That small conversation gave me more energy than I expected. For the first time in years, someone spoke to me like I was capable of making important financial decisions. Not like an old lady who needed help managing her money. From there, I took the bus to Charleston to visit the senior living community Dorothy had mentioned. It was called Serenity Gardens. And as soon as I arrived, I understood why Dorothy's sister loved it. Beautiful, clean, well-kept gardens. An atmosphere of peace I hadn't felt in years. The receptionist, a kind woman named Angela, greeted me warmly when I explained I was interested in seeing the facilities. "I'm so glad you came," she said enthusiastically. "We actually have 2 lovely apartments available right now. Would you like a tour?" For the next 2 hours, Angela showed me everything. The apartments were small but comfortable. Living room, bedroom, full bathroom, kitchenette. What I loved most was the balcony overlooking the gardens, where I could imagine drinking my morning coffee and watching the sunset. "We have lots of activities," Angela explained as we walked through the common areas. "Mondays are yoga, Tuesdays are crafts, Wednesdays chapel service, Thursdays ballroom dancing, Fridays movie nights. Weekends we organize trips. Savannah, Asheville, the mountains." Every activity she mentioned sounded like something I might enjoy. Things I'd never done because I was always waiting for Lily's schedule. "Are the people who live here happy?" I asked. Angela smiled. "Most of our residents come here after complicated family situations. Some lost their spouses. Others have children who live far away. Others simply decided they wanted more independence. At first, many arrive sad, nostalgic. But after a few months, you see them transform. Happier, more active, more alive. That word hit me hard. Alive. How long had it been since I felt truly alive? "What are the requirements?" I asked. Angela explained. "Be over 60. Check. Have stable income. My savings covered several years. Pass a basic medical exam. My health was excellent. The monthly cost included maintenance, security, activities, and utilities. It was considerable, but perfectly manageable. How long does the process take? If you bring all the documents this week, we could have everything ready in 2 weeks." I looked again at the balcony of the apartment I liked most, the one facing the gardens, where I'd seen several residents chatting under the shade of a big oak tree. In that moment, I made a decision that surprised even me with how quick and clear it was. "I'll take the one with the balcony facing the gardens," I said without hesitation. "Excellent choice," Angela exclaimed. "That's one of the most requested. Here's the list of documents you'll need and the contract to review." I returned home that afternoon with a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the hope that Lily would change. Not the hope that things would go back to how they were. But hope for a new life that depended entirely on my own decisions. That night, instead of watching TV like I did every Sunday, I organized my documents. Birth certificate. Proof of income. bank statements, identification. It felt strange preparing paperwork to start a new life at 65. But every document I organized made me more certain of my decision. Monday morning, I went to the bank exactly at 9 when they opened. Mr. Thompson greeted me with professional courtesy. But when I explained I needed to make significant moves in my accounts for a personal investment, I noticed a new respect in his eyes. "Mrs. Carter, I'm delighted to hear you're making proactive financial decisions," he said, reviewing my statements. "You've been very disciplined with your savings. You have solid resources." Hearing those words filled me with confidence I didn't know I had. For so long, I'd lived thinking I was a person of limited means, someone who depended on others. But the reality? I'd worked hard, saved diligently, built a solid financial foundation without anyone's help. "I need to make a significant transfer to my checking account," I explained. "And I want to know about safe investments that provide monthly income." For the next hour, Mr. Thompson explained investment options that could give me regular income without touching the principal. It was information I'd never sought before because I always thought my money was meant for emergencies or for helping Lily. Now I saw I had options. I could make my money work for me. From there, I went to the office of Mr. David Reynolds, a lawyer Dorothy had recommended years ago. I needed all my assets in order. And more importantly, I needed to update my will. "Mrs. Carter, what brings you here?" Mr. Reynolds asked. "I need to update my will and organize my assets," I said directly. For the next 40 minutes, we reviewed everything. Property documents, bank accounts, insurance policies. It was impressive seeing it all together. I'd really built a considerable estate through sheer work and discipline. "Do you have specific changes in mind for the will?" he asked. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "I want to leave 50% of my assets to charitable organizations that help single working mothers. The other 50% goes to my daughter, but with one condition." "What kind of condition?" "She can only access the inheritance after writing a letter explaining why she made certain decisions about our relationship. She doesn't have to apologize. She just has to be honest. That letter must be delivered to you as a witness. She has to write it, even if I'm no longer here to read it." Mr. Reynolds wrote everything down carefully. "That's a very thoughtful condition, Mrs. Carter. It gives her an opportunity for reflection without forcing reconciliation." "Exactly," I confirmed. "I'm not looking for revenge, Mr. Reynolds. I'm looking for her to understand that actions have consequences, even the actions of children toward their parents." When I left the lawyer's office, I felt like a completely different person. I'd taken total control of my financial situation, secured my future, established clear boundaries for my relationship with Lily. Even after my death, the following days passed in a blur of activity. I hired movers to assess my belongings. I decided to keep only essentials: clothes, small furniture, important photos, objects with real sentimental value. Everything else would be donated or sold. The hardest part was deciding what to do with Lily's things still in her old room. Trophies, books, clothes she'd left behind. I finally packed everything carefully in labeled boxes and rented a storage unit near her condo. If she ever wanted them, she could pick them up. If not, eventually they'd be discarded. During that week, Lily called twice. The conversations were polite but distant on both sides. She talked about her new job, decorating plans, dinners with the Whitmores. I listened, asked appropriate questions, but I didn't share anything about my own plans. For the first time in years, I had important secrets that didn't include my daughter. "Is everything okay, Mom?" she asked on the second call. "You sound different." "Everything is perfect, baby," I replied with complete honesty. "I'm just organizing some things around the house. Do you need help with anything?" The question would have thrilled me before. Now it just confirmed that Lily still saw me as someone who needed help, not someone capable of solving her own problems. "No thank you, baby. Everything is under control." On Friday, I got the call from Angela at Serenity Gardens. My application had been approved. I could move in the following Monday if I wanted. That night, alone in my house surrounded by packed boxes and furniture covered with sheets, I didn't feel sadness. I felt excitement. On Saturday morning, as I had my last coffee at the kitchen table where I'd planned so many meals for Lily, my phone rang. It was her. "Mom, Marcus and I want to invite you to dinner tomorrow. We're going to use the new dining room at the condo for the first time." It was the invitation I'd waited months for. They finally wanted to include me, show me their home, treat me like part of their life. But it was too late. "Oh, baby, that's a shame," I replied calmly. "I already have plans tomorrow." "Plans? With who?" "Some new friends. We're going on a day trip to the coast." It wasn't a lie. The residents of Serenity Gardens had a trip scheduled, and I'd already signed up. "But Mom, we can change it to another day. It's important to us that you see our home." "Thank you, baby. But I'm already committed. Maybe another time when I have more availability." There was a long silence on the other end. Lily wasn't used to me having plans that didn't involve waiting for her. "Well, okay. We'll organize something later." "Sure, baby. Enjoy your dinner." When I hung up, I sat in that familiar kitchen for the last time, smiling with deep satisfaction. For the first time in my life, Lily had to adjust to my schedule instead of me adjusting to hers. It was a small change, but it symbolized a much bigger transformation. Evelyn Carter had stopped being a woman waiting to be included. She'd become a woman who had her own life, her own plans, her own happiness. Sunday night, after returning from a beautiful day at the coast where I'd met 3 wonderful women who would become my neighbors, I packed my last belongings. The move would be early Monday. By noon, I'd be settled in my new home. That last night in the house where I'd raised Lily, I didn't cry. I didn't feel nostalgic. Instead, I felt deep gratitude for the woman I'd been, and genuine excitement for the woman I was becoming. I'd made the bravest decision of my life, choosing my own happiness over waiting for the approval of others. Early Monday, as the movers loaded my belongings, I looked one last time at every room. In Lily's bedroom, now completely empty, I whispered a silent farewell. "Thank you for teaching me that true love sometimes means knowing when to walk away." The Evelyn Carter who walked out of that house was a completely new woman, a woman who had learned that dignity is non-negotiable, that respect is taught by example, and that it's never too late to start over when you choose yourself. As the moving truck drove toward Charleston, toward my new life at Serenity Gardens, I sat in the passenger seat, smiling toward the future. For the first time in 65 years, I didn't know exactly what awaited me, and that uncertainty felt like the most beautiful freedom in the world. My first week at Serenity Gardens passed like a dream I didn't want to wake from. Every morning, I woke in my cozy apartment, made coffee in my kitchenette, went out on my balcony to watch the gardens where I'd already identified my neighbors. There was Mrs. Carmen, 71, who'd been an elementary school teacher for 40 years. Mrs. Diane, 68, who'd worked in city government and had fascinating stories. Mr. Jackson, 74, a widower who'd been a carpenter and now made small furniture pieces to gift to friends. It felt strange being part of a group where I was valued for who I was, not for what I could do for others. At community meals, my new friends asked about my life, my opinions, my plans. No one saw me as somebody's mother, or the awkward mother-in-law. I was simply Evelyn, a woman with her own stories, her own dreams, her own personality. On Wednesday, I joined the crafts class led by Mrs. Helena, an elegant 73-year-old who'd been a seamstress in her youth. While embroidering flowers on a pillowcase, I realized I hadn't done anything purely for pleasure in years, without thinking about whether Lily would like it, or if it would be useful for someone else. "You know what, Evelyn?" Mrs. Helena said, checking my work. "You have a real talent for this. You should come every week." It was a simple compliment, but it touched my heart. How long had it been since someone recognized my work for its own sake? Thursday was my first ballroom dancing class. Mr. Vincent, a distinguished 75-year-old former PE teacher, led the classes with contagious patience and joy. At first, I was embarrassed. I hadn't danced in decades, but Mr. Vincent reassured me. "No one judges here, Evelyn," he said with a kind smile. "We're here to have fun and remember it's never too late to learn new things." During that class, I danced the cha-cha, the waltz, even a little salsa. I laughed harder than I'd laughed in years. My classmates applauded when I managed a difficult step, helped me when I got confused, made me feel like I was part of a real family, a family that had chosen me, and that I had chosen too. That night, as I ate dinner alone in my apartment, but without feeling lonely, my phone rang. It was Lily. "Mom, where are you?" Her voice was frantic, panicked. I went to the house and it's completely empty. The neighbors said you moved. What's going on? Her voice had a mix of confusion and fear I hadn't heard since she was little and got lost at the grocery store. For a moment, my maternal instinct wanted to reassure her immediately. Explain everything. Promise her I was fine. But the new Evelyn, the one who had emerged in these last weeks, kept her composure. I'm doing very well, baby, I replied calmly. I moved to a place more suitable for my age. More suitable? What does that mean? Why didn't you tell me anything? Because these were personal decisions that didn't require your approval, I said firmly, but without aggression. There was a long silence on the other end. Lily wasn't used to me making important decisions without consulting her, even though she'd been making hers for years without consulting me. Where are you living now? In a place where I'm happy, baby. That's what matters. Mom, you're scaring me. This isn't like you. Are you mad at me about something? The question would have disarmed me before. I would have rushed to explain I wasn't mad, that I loved her, that I just wanted us to be happy together. But now I saw that question for what it really was. An attempt to return to the old dynamic where I was responsible for managing her emotions. I'm not mad, Lily. I'm living my life. What does that mean? It means I finally understood that I have the right to make my own decisions, to have my own plans, to be happy without depending on the approval of others. Another silence. I could imagine Lily trying to process this version of her mother she didn't recognize. Can you tell me where you are? Marcus and I are worried. Marcus and I. Always Marcus and I. Like they were a single entity making joint decisions about my life. But there was something different in Lily's tone. For the first time in a long time, she seemed genuinely worried about me. Not just annoyed because I wasn't available when she needed me. I'm at Serenity Gardens in Charleston, I finally told her. It's a very nice residential community for people my age. A retirement home? The disbelief in her voice was sharp. The word bothered me, but didn't surprise me. To Lily, any place where older people lived was automatically a retirement home. No, baby. It's a place where I live independently with the company of people at the same stage of life as me. I have my own apartment, my own activities, my own social life. Social life. There was genuine surprise in her voice. Like she'd never considered I could have a social life independent of her. Yes, Lily. I have new friends. Activities I enjoy. Plans that don't include waiting for you to have time for me. The words came out more direct than I'd planned. But I didn't regret them. It was time for Lily to understand the consequences of her decisions. Mom, we've always had time for you. Did you really have time to include me in your wedding? The silence that followed was long and heavy. It was the first time I directly mentioned the wedding exclusion, and we both knew it was the elephant in the room that had been present in all our conversations since. Mom, I already explained that it all happened so fast. Lily, I interrupted, my voice firm but calm. I'm not interested in hearing more excuses. What happened happened. I'm not looking for apologies or explanations. I just want you to understand that decisions have consequences. What kind of consequences? The consequence that I finally understood I'm not a priority in your life. And I've decided you won't be a priority in mine either. The words came out with a clarity that surprised me. There was no anger in my voice. No resentment. Only quiet honesty that made me feel freer than I'd felt in years. Does that mean you don't want to be my mother anymore? The question hurt because I could hear the little girl behind the adult woman. But it also strengthened me because it reminded me that Lily knew exactly what she'd lost. I will always be your mother, baby. But I will no longer be the mother who waits for crumbs of your attention. I will no longer be the mother who accepts any treatment just to be present in your life. If you want a relationship with me, it will have to be a relationship of mutual respect. And what would that look like? It was the first time Lily had specifically asked what I wanted from our relationship instead of simply assuming I'd adapt to whatever she offered. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. But I know it can't be like before. After I hung up that night, I sat on my balcony watching the lights of Charleston, feeling a mix of sadness and liberation. It had been the hardest conversation of my life, but also the most necessary. For the first time, I'd set clear boundaries with my daughter. I'd express my feelings without trying to protect hers. I'd place my dignity above my desire to keep the peace. The following days passed without news from Lily, and for the first time, her silence didn't cause me anxiety. I was too busy discovering my new life to worry about interpreting her lack of communication. On Friday, I participated in the weekly excursion to downtown Charleston, where we visited historic sites and ate at a traditional low-country restaurant. On Saturday, I went to yoga for the first time in my life and discovered my body was more flexible than I thought. On Sunday, after chapel service at Serenity Gardens, I was returning to my apartment when Angela stopped me. "Mrs. Carter, you have visitors," she said with a smile. "A young couple who say they're family." My heart sped up a little, but not with anxiety. More curiosity to see what Lily and Marcus wanted. I found them in the visitors' lounge, sitting together on one of the elegant sofas. Lily looked nervous, almost fragile, very different from the confident, successful woman she'd been in our last encounters. Marcus looked uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mom," Lily said, standing when she saw me. "Thank you for seeing us." It was strange that she thanked me for seeing them, like she finally understood she could no longer simply appear in my life uninvited. "Have a seat," I said, taking the chair across from them. "How are you?" "We're fine," Lily replied, though her voice suggested otherwise. "We wanted to come see where you're living, to make sure you're comfortable." I looked around the visitors' lounge. Elegant furniture, well-kept plants, large windows letting in natural light. Then I looked at them. This young couple who'd come to make sure I was comfortable, as if they had any right to approve my life decisions. "As you can see, I'm very comfortable," I said with a genuine smile. "This place is perfect for me." "Yes, it looks very nice," Marcus admitted, speaking for the first time. "It must be expensive, though." There it was, the real concern. Not my happiness, not my comfort, but how much of their inheritance I was spending. "Fortunately, I can pay for it without problems," I replied calmly. "It turns out I worked and saved more than you knew." I watched as Lily and Marcus exchanged a quick glance. It was obvious they discussed my financial situation before coming. "Mom, we don't want you to run out of money living in a place like this," Lily said, her voice concerned. "Why would I run out of money?" I asked with genuine curiosity. "Well, you always told us you had to watch every dollar. That money didn't stretch far." It was true. For years I'd told her that. But what I never explained was that it didn't stretch far because I constantly prioritized her needs over mine. Because I saved for her emergencies instead of spending on my own comfort. "It's true I watched every dollar," I confirmed. "But it was because I was saving for you, to help you when you needed it. Now that it's clear you don't need my help, I can use my money for my own happiness." "What do you mean we don't need your help?" Marcus asked, his voice tense. "I mean you're successful, independent adults capable of making your own decisions without consulting me, including decisions as important as getting married. If you're independent enough for that, then you don't need me saving my money for your emergencies." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. I could see them processing the logic of my words, realizing they couldn't have both. Total independence from me when it suited them and access to my resources when they needed them. "Mom," Lily said finally, her voice softer. "Are you very angry with me?" It was the question of a child, not an adult. And for the first time since the wedding, I felt a little compassion for her. But it was a different kind of compassion. Not the blind compassion that had led me to excuse her behavior for years. "I'm not angry, baby," I told her honestly. "I'm disappointed. I'm sad. But above all, I'm at peace. At peace. At peace with finally understanding who I am beyond being your mother. At peace with discovering I can be happy without depending on your approval or attention." Lily was silent for a moment. I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. "Does that mean you don't love me anymore?" It was the question I'd been waiting for. And I had the answer ready. "I love you more than you can imagine, Lily. But I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to disrespect you. I've learned that true love includes boundaries, includes dignity, includes mutual respect. And what can we do to fix this?" Marcus asked, speaking as if he truly cared about the answer. I looked at both of them. This young couple who'd come to fix the situation, probably hoping that with a visit and a few apologies, everything would return to normal. "There's nothing to fix," I said calmly. "I'm not broken. I'm not sick. I'm not acting out of spite. I'm simply living the life I deserve to live." "But can we still be family?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "We will always be family," I assured her. "But it will be a different kind of family. One where we respect each other, where we include each other in important things, where we treat each other as equal adults." "How do we know what you expect from us?" Marcus asked. It was a practical question, and I appreciated his honesty. Lily knows how to treat me with respect, I replied, looking directly at my daughter. She did it for many years when she was younger. She just needs to remember how. Lily nodded slowly, like she was finally understanding there was no quick fix, that she'd have to do real work to rebuild our relationship. Can we call you sometimes? She asked in a small voice. Of course, I said, but I won't be available every time you call. I have my own life now, my own activities, my own commitments. It felt strange saying those words. For 65 years, I'd never had commitments I couldn't cancel for Lily. Now I had crafts classes, excursions, dinners with friends, a social life that was important to me. When they left that afternoon, after vague promises to maintain better communication and do things differently, I stayed seated in the visitors' lounge for a while longer, processing what had happened. There had been no dramatic reconciliation, no tears of remorse, no promises of immediate change. But there had been something more valuable: recognition. For the first time, Lily had recognized she'd treated me poorly, that she'd made decisions that hurt me, and that she'd have to make a real effort if she wanted a relationship with me. That night, during community dinner in the dining hall at Serenity Gardens, my new friends asked about my visitors. Everything okay with the family? Mrs. Carmen asked with genuine concern. Everything is exactly as it should be, I replied with a smile. For the first time in years, everything is exactly as it should be. And it was true. I didn't know if Lily and I would ever have a close relationship again. I didn't know if she would truly change or just learn to manage me better. But I knew that I had changed forever. And no matter what happened to our relationship, I would be fine. The Evelyn who had waited for years for her daughter to include her in her life had died forever. In her place, a woman had been born who knew her worth, who had her own dreams, who was capable of being happy with or without the approval of others. And that transformation, painful as it had been, was worth more than any reconciliation that required me to return to being the small, subservient woman I'd been before. 6 months later. Today, I wake up every morning in my small but cozy apartment. I look out the window and see a different world. It's not a world without pain, but it's a world where I choose who is part of my story. I tend my plants on the balcony. I read books I always wanted to read. I attend chapel where no one knows me as Lily's mother. I'm simply Evelyn Carter, a 65-year-old woman learning to live for herself after decades of living exclusively for others. Sometimes I get calls from unknown numbers that I know are Lily trying to reach me through other people's phones. I hear her voice on the answering machine, always crying, always apologizing, always promising she'll change. But some exclusions cause pain too deep to be healed with just words. Some rejections are too final to be forgiven with simple remorse. Lily had the opportunity to include me in the most important moment of her life. She chose to leave me out. Now I choose to leave her out of my new life. During these months, I've learned that the loneliness I feared doesn't exist when you live in peace with yourself. My days are filled with activities that nourish my soul. Crafts with Mrs. Helena. Thursday dances with Mr. Vincent. Weekend excursions where I discover parts of the South I'd never visited. At community dinners, my friends listen to me attentively when I tell stories of my youth. When I share recipes I learned from my mother. When I give my opinion on the shows we watch together in the afternoons. Yesterday at the grocery store, a woman recognized me and told me Lily was offering a reward for anyone who knew my whereabouts. I smiled politely and replied that sometimes people find each other when they're ready to find each other. I don't feel rage. I don't feel vengeance. I don't feel hatred. I feel only the peace of someone who made the right decision at the right time. Lily learned in the most painful way possible that mothers also have feelings, that love has boundaries, and that some doors, once closed, never open again. Last week, I received a very formal letter delivered by a lawyer. It was from Lily. Typed. No tears to smudge the ink. No shaky handwriting of emotion. In that letter, my daughter explained, with a coldness that surprised me, her reasons for excluding me from the wedding. She said it had been a practical decision, that the Whitmores had insisted on a small ceremony, that they hadn't wanted to hurt my feelings, but hadn't wanted to create conflict with her new in-laws either. I read that letter 3 times before fully understanding what I was reading. Lily had reduced the most painful moment of my life to a practical decision. She'd turned my exclusion into a matter of family diplomacy. There was no recognition of the harm she'd caused. No understanding of the sacrifice it had been to raise her alone. No gratitude for the years of unconditional love I'd given her. That letter confirmed something I already knew in my heart. The Lily I'd raised, the girl who promised I'd always be the most important person in her life, had disappeared forever. In her place was a woman who viewed our relationship as a social obligation that could be managed with efficiency, not as a sacred bond that deserved care and respect. I put the letter away in a wooden box along with old photographs that had resisted time. Not out of spite, but because some words only need to be read, not answered. A mother's love doesn't end. It just changes form. My love for Lily transformed into something different. Respect for my own dignity. Care for my own happiness. Protection for my own peace. This morning, as I water the plants on my balcony and watch the sunrise over Charleston, I think of all the women who, like me, have spent their lives waiting to be valued by others. I think of the mothers who sacrifice their dreams for children who later see them as awkward burdens. I think of the grandmothers who babysit grandchildren, only to be told they're interfering too much. I think of all of us who learned that our worth depended on how much we could give to others, never on how much we deserved to receive. To all those women, I would say what I now know. It's never too late to choose your own happiness. It's never too late to set boundaries. It's never too late to decide that you deserve respect, that you deserve consideration, that you deserve to be treated as the valuable person you've always been. The freedom I feel now wasn't born from punishing Lily. It was born from freeing myself. It wasn't born from revenge, but from self-respect. It wasn't born from hatred, but from the self-love that had been dormant for too many years. Last night, after community dinner, Mrs. Carmen asked me if I ever regretted making this decision. "Don't you miss your daughter?" she asked with the kindness of someone genuinely concerned. "I miss the daughter I thought I had," I replied honestly. "But I don't miss the relationship we actually had, because that relationship was slowly destroying me. It's the purest truth I've ever spoken. For years, I lived a fantasy where I believed Lily loved me the same way I loved her. The reality is that to Lily, I was a convenience when she needed me, and a nuisance when she didn't. Accepting that reality was painful, but it was also liberating. Today, I write these words from my balcony, with the sound of the community garden fountain in the background, with the scent of the bougainvillea I planted last month, with the certainty that I chose the right path. I don't know what the future holds, but I know it will be a future where my happiness doesn't depend on the decisions of others. Sometimes the greatest acknowledgement is the silence one chooses to maintain. And in that silence, Evelyn Carter finally found her voice, her strength, her peace. Some daughters want mothers who wait in the shadows, who sacrifice endlessly, who accept anything just to stay in their lives. But some mothers finally learn that the greatest gift they can give, to themselves and to their daughters, is the lesson that respect isn't optional, that love without dignity isn't love at all, and that some doors, once closed by disrespect, never open again, not because of cruelty, but because of self-preservation.